But we're going to get into a topic, and this is all about you, this topic. This is about you, your career, your future, what you have invested a lot of time and money in, and that's your career as a project manager. So I want to talk about you and your interactions with others first. The future of project management, as in the write-up, is rapid change. And we're going to talk about that throughout the presentation. Rapid change in the environments that you work within. A growing push to flatten organizations. You already are matrixed. You already have to influence, but that it's going to become compounded, and you're in the power that you must have to influence others. But to do that, I think we have to take a step back and start learning more about basic human operation, and also learn about how we learn, because another important aspect of the future of project management is are you learning? Are you learning continuously? And do you really understand where you learn best? So we're definitely going to get into that aspect. From there, adaptive. If you have heard me speak before, I've done a lot of presentations on adaptive leadership. So you will get 5 or 6 slides around that concept, but really I want to dig into the changing mindset of change management. Projects, by their very nature, are change. And our ideas and thoughts around change management is adjusting based on this idea of rapid change. And, and that crazy buzzword, that VUCA word, VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and how that rapid pace of VUCA and disruption is affecting, how we see change. And also digging into that, we'll get into this idea of what is an adaptive challenge. In the write-up, you saw something called unknown unknowns. What does that mean? How do you find unknown unknowns? Why are those important? Then trends, there are 2 specific trends I want to dig into. One is the product mindset. If you see the capital 1 thing that occurred with the Agile team, it's really part of a goal to move more to a lean portfolio product mindset, and in how they're going to change their structure to do that. So that was a pretty significant shift. So there is trends there that you have to look at and dig into. And then I'm going to spend some time on digital transformation and talking about the big word data, D-A-T-A, data. How do you understand data? Do you really get a good concept of what it is, not just how to produce it? And then we're going to end with you again. We're going to talk about being proactive, not reactive, in VUCA. We're going to talk about your career as a product and how do you manage that product appropriately, because the very future of the very future of project management is disruption and becoming comfortable being uncomfortable. So how do you do that? How do you protect yourself? Because ultimately what we're doing is we're trying to protect ourselves from being a casualty of rapid change. So the future of project management really centers around this idea of your reaction to this rapid change, and how do you react as it relates to the work you do, and how do you react as it relates to you as a product, as your career as a product. All right. Remember, questions, comments, thoughts, hit me up. If you don't quite agree with something, say it. I want to hear from you. I definitely want to hear your thoughts. So please don't hesitate. So our brain is not made for knowledge work. It's simply put, we were not developed to work in the confines and the structures of complex and complicated knowledge work. There's so many nuances and so much interaction that just was not developed, or we haven't fully developed it. And as we develop, we have to deal with barriers. So a really good project manager who is trying to grow into the future needs to take a step back and look at themselves through the distortions, both emotional distortions and cognitive distortions that affect us as a work machine. I could do a whole hour presentation just on this. I could tie it to influence, We could do a presentation on neuroscience. You'll see a couple other neuroscience elements in this. But to keep it simple, look at that about your brain. Your brain is 2% of your body, but takes in 20% of fuel. Our brains operate on efficiency and survival. This means that you're always tending towards preset heuristic patterns. And this gets into the Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman's work on System 1, System 2 thinking. A great reference as it relates to digging into this more. And then as you dig into it deeper, you have to realize that you're driven by pessimism and fear because your brain wants you to survive. But all of this is wrapped around the initial emotional response dealing with real, true physical threats. So our initial response to everything is to help our physical ability to handle the situation. And all of that affects our cognition. Adrenaline, cortisol, when we have that initial emotional reaction, it affects our cognition. But what I want you to get out of this slide and a couple other slides going forward is how do you start digging into this deeper to get a better understanding of yourself so that you can filter and react accordingly, then understanding others. The primary example I give this is the cognitive distortion of loss regret. There's so many challenges in project management around people that do not want to change. And there becomes frustration, anger, but the reality is that is a cognitive distortion called loss regret, where I rather do nothing so I don't fail than do something with any potential of failure. It's a protective mechanism because I understand today, I see today, I'm comfortable in today. I don't have to push myself into thinking more, which drains more energy, because I can manage today in a pure, almost being on the hold pattern. Like if you ever watched the movie Click, although Adam Sandler basically had a button that put himself in the hold pattern, he just worked autonomously, around him. And that's what our brains do. That's what our brains want to do, if at all possible. So emotional distortions, that is the idea of you're getting into your anxiety issues, you're getting into your negative self-talk issues, you're getting into the physical responses to stress, stomach issues, intestinal issues, headaches, heart palpitations. How do you manage that? And then if you start doing a better job of managing your emotional distortions, how do you get through and deal with the cognitive distortions that are out there? And how then do you help others get through those cognitive distortions? So again, thoughts, comments, questions, that's a very high level look, but the future of project management is disruption. It's disorientation. It's ambiguity. How do you prepare yourself for that? First and foremost, understanding how you operate. And the base level of that operation, and I know I'm still on that first slide, so I'll go back to it, is this idea of cognitive behavioral therapy, the way our brains operate, and getting an understanding of that can help you, because ultimately what you're seeing now is how do you find the broken beliefs that are driving companies to not perform well? And I'll get into that in the adaptive problem section with actually a very specific example. So beliefs drive thoughts. Thoughts drive your feelings, and then thoughts and feelings together drive your actions and your behaviors. But if we just try to change thoughts and feelings, okay, that thoughts and feelings can help, but what we do is we just try to change behaviors without digging deeper into ultimately that belief level. So the first fundamental belief you have to dig into is, can you operate this way? Can you grow? This growth mindset is just not airy-fairy thought. It's got some science behind it, which I'll show in the next slide. But do you believe that you can learn, adjust, and adapt? Do you believe that you can safely grow and adjust and change. The fact that I can work on something, I can fail and learn again. The growth mindset is also wrapped around this idea of psychological safety. The thing is, with psychological safety and a growth mindset, they both tie back to you. The only person that can make you psychologically safe is yourself. And that really ties into the growth mindset and the confidence to know that you're safe, that you can make adjustments, you can pivot, you can be direct, you can fail. And if something happens, you can accept the consequences of that and be able to move forward in your career. Most work structures that we have built over the last 300 years, based on our educational system and based on our leadership strategies, focus in on building the fixed mindset in us. Because what we have to do is we just have to do what we're told, process it, and then get to the other side. The thing here is productivity. In rapid changing disruptive environments, the growth mindset allows organizations to tap into a whole other level of productivity. And that's what you want to be thinking about. You want to be thinking about in the future of project management, how much more productive you can get utilizing the tools of the growth mindset, understanding the human work machine, because ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to learn how to get things done. I know for future project management, we could talk about all different types of scheduling tools. We could talk about using AI as it relates to managing your resources over the long haul, which is all great, which is all great. But what it boils down to is, can you get things done? And most of the time for project managers, it's about getting things done through others. So you can see the neurotransmitters, the feelings that are associated with those neurotransmitters when you're at that seeking system, when you're comfortable, when you're looking, when you don't feel overstressed, or you don't feel undesired. The fear side of things has two elements. One is that you don't feel your stuff is worth anything, or you're too overworked that all you're worried about is getting the things done. And you're going to see that in an upcoming slide around learning. So being able to tap into those neurotransmitters, especially protecting ourselves from cortisol and adrenaline. Those are cortisol and adrenaline on the emotional fear side, affects your cognition, and it really puts a damper on your overall ability to perform in complex, distorted, disruptive environments. And that weighs on you. It takes time off of your career. In a lot of cases, it can take time off of your life. And that's something we have to take into consideration. We have to earn a certain income. To earn a certain income, we have to live in complexity. If we have to live in complexity, then we have to be able to deal with it. So learning how to deal with it better and thrive in it is what we're talking about there. So first step, understanding yourself, getting the deeper understanding of the emotional responses, emotional distortions, and then digging deeper into those cognitive distortions, how you can manage yourself, and then how you can help others through those distortions. Again, lots of materials, lots of slides that you can ask me for on that side of things. Questions, thoughts, put them in the chat. Again, I'd love to hear it. If you think this is all phooey, let me know, and I could dig into other things. But now we're going to get into the next step for the future of project management. You have to learn. I love what PMI does with the PDU system. I love what PMI does with the PDU system because it does force you to learn, to maintain that designation or any of the other designations that you may have as part of the PMI universe. Even if you hold your CSM now, you need to keep continuing education credits. And of course, the Scrum Alliance accepts PMI PDUs as part of that continuing education credit. But to learn, you have to see where you learn best. So as you're listening to me for a second, close your eyes and think about one of your best working times. Not an easier job like the pizza shop back in college, but in your complex and complicated work, what was going on? For me, I was 29 years old. I was working for Global Knowledge, 28, 29. I was working for Global Knowledge, and I was given the stretch assignment to become the general manager for Canada during a very disruptive time. I was there for 6 months. It was insane. I also kept my other job. As I think back to that time, I just think back to it as exciting, fun, vibrant. And I don't even feel some of the stressors I think about with other times in my life. I was in that green zone. There was disequilibrium for sure, but I was in a point where I could accept that learning. I felt safe to fail. I felt safe to make mistakes. Maybe I was too dumb at that time, but ultimately I can remember myself performing, and then the amount I learned, I actually call that my MBA experience, was significant. So when we look at this, we realize when we're in the avoidance zone, it's usually when we feel a disconnect from purpose. We've allowed ourselves to operate too much under learned helplessness, and we just don't see any value in learning anything. So this is where we let the status quo kind of kill us. This is the idea of being a marketer for years in direct mail for 20 years and then getting, let go in the late 2018s and not being able to find a job in the marketing world any longer because the technologies, the processes, the mindsets have all changed. Getting comfortable as a project manager in this type of environment is very dangerous. The other problem is most of you face is being in that red zone. You're working to get things done, to figure things out, to solve problems. You don't have any time for something new. You just have to get it done. Sometimes we put ourselves in this. Sometimes our work environment puts us into this, but there is no learning there. When faced with new information, you're just going to push it off to the side so you can get done what you need to get done. True learning starts as you put yourself in that green zone. And, how do you do that? And how do you manage this? Learning is all about conflict, dissenting voices, different perspectives, and letting more people do things so you have more time. This is hard. Those bottom three things drive tension, it eats up time, and it can cause distress. But if you really think back to it, you can see how powerful learning happens there and probably happened in your career at some point in time based on that. I certainly learned that in Canada. There was a definite difference in how the market operated. And I had to bring in dissenting voices that said, hey, we should do it this way, or hey, we should do it that way. And I had to grow and learn from that. And even now in my current job at SoftEd, to learn how to market without a marketing budget and to sell in a very crowded marketplace. I had to bring in different voices and change some of my thought processes. Okay, you get too hot. There are ways to cool things down. There are technical aspects of our jobs that we know that we can put ourselves on autopilot and we can get done. We can put some structure into place. We can slow things down, and then we can try to pull back some of the responsibilities. But these are some of the levers that you have to look at as part of the learning process. And ultimately, you want to get into that point right there at that point before panic in the learning zone. And what I did is the second to the bottom bullet point, stretch assignments, to me are one of the most powerful ways to get value back in your learning. Being given the opportunity to do something that's just beyond you. Here's the thing, you're getting paid. I didn't have to get my MBA. I had to pay $20,000, $30,000 to get my MBA. In 1998, Global Knowledge gave it to me in 6 months. All from a stretch assignment. All from a stretch assignment. Think about what value you would get back as it relates to you as a work product by putting yourself in these stretch assignment opportunities. Even if you fail, the knowledge gained can be utilized as part of you as a product to look at other opportunities. That's the way we have to think about it in this disruptive environment. The maximum value you can give to your company is by seeing and always trying to maximize the value of you as a product, you as a work product. The two work. When it's out of balance, then the thought is they latch you in and then you don't leave, or they're not taking care of you and you move on. So this is a powerful thing to be thinking about. The more value you create in yourself, the more value you give to your company back, but you also can learn on their dollar. So this gets us into the idea of being adaptive. PMI, the PMBOK 7.0, gets into being adaptive. And this is where the pivot's going to start coming. You see hybrid agile, you see agile with structure, you see all these different types of mindsets going on out there. The tailored approach, FUI. Every one of those things is a tool in your toolkit. You are a project manager. You are an adaptive project manager because you understand two things, those bottom two elements. You can decipher between the essential and the expendable and become maniacal in your prioritization. And you always understand that status quo is going to get you in trouble if you get too much into that yellow zone of comfort. It starts with you. Empowerment based on strong psychological safety to lead at the point of the work that you're doing. Challenge others because you see the value in that, so you have more time to grow. And then looking at that essential versus expendable. And finally, bringing in the right tools for the right situation. I'll take a stop here. The only way you can really adopt this, and dig into it is yet you believe in it. Do you believe in some of the stuff I'm saying right now? Do you believe how important it is to understand yourself as a human work machine? To understand this idea of expendable, dispensable? Do you see it? Because if you don't, then you'll always go back to your tendencies and your beliefs. And I'm going to get into that shortly with this idea of adaptive versus technical problems. So if you, at this point, what you really want to be thinking about now is, okay, I got this whole thing. I can be adaptive. I get learning, but how does this tie back? And there was one missed slide here as I looked at the flow. Ultimately, and I'm going to make a change here because I think it's only right to do that. Ultimately, going back to learning, if you are an essential versus indispensable type of person, can you also unlearn? My experience, I do a lot of coaching of business owners. I do a lot of consulting work. I got soft dead with that consulting work. I have to unlearn to provide more value to them. Medical knowledge now doubles in anywhere between 18 months and 3 years, depending on what report you see. The knowledge base doubles. Your hope is that when you engage a physician, a doctor, an oncologist, if you have to, which is, no, I don't wish that on anyone, do they unlearn knowledge to gain the knowledge of what's going on with the additional information pool? I want a project manager coming to me in this complicated and complex world who has unlearned some of the techniques that they used previously that are no longer valuable. So what I'm saying is it's more valuable to show your ability to pivot, learn, adjust, and get things done than it is to show just your experience. And then being able to articulate as you as a product how you were able to overcome your experience, learn and adapt, and gain new experiences to solve problems that you weren't even expected to see. What has made you successful in the past does not promise to continue to bring you success in the future. The book is written by Barry O'Reilly. The book is called Unlearning. It's part of the future of project management. I talked about, so now add unlearning to it. Do you believe this? You see that the future of project management is wrapped around your ability to understand how you operate, to learn, and also to unlearn. If so, now we have to dig into this adaptive thing, and this is where PMI is going. PMI is seeing the fact that a lot of its techniques were strong for technical problems, where I understood the problem, I knew what the solution was, I just needed to set a program up and run it. A lot of you here have probably run very big, complicated technical challenges. But the stress was in making that the iron triangle, and doing so with a good quality product. And again, I'll stop right here for a second. Please, comments, thoughts, don't hesitate to throw those at me. Love to hear what you're thinking about as we go through this. Agile was put into play because we realized we had some idea of the problem, but during the length of it, what it takes to get the problem solved, things change during that process. So there's learning that needs to happen as you go through to the final solution. So Agile provides us the ability to do that, to iterate, to allow for emergent requirements, to embrace change as we're going through to finalize the solution. What we're really saying now for the future of project management is your problems are getting more and more unclear, exactly what the source of the problem is. And then once you find or think you've learned what that source of the problem is, then you have to still put it through a process by which you can iterate and learn to get to the final outcome. See this thing? Learning, learning, learning. The future of project management rests on this concept of learning. But to learn, you got to understand what an adaptive problem really is. And I'm going to give you an example. So SoftEd, we're a very successful Agile training, transformation, coaching organization. But we saw our revenues kind of in like 2-3 years ago, kind of level off, go down, go up. And we tried tons of technical things, added new salespeople, adjusted the sales process, spent more money in marketing, spent less money in marketing, added new products, added different messaging around that products. And we're like, what's going on? What we really had to dig into and look at, and we really haven't solved this problem yet, is that our challenge was an adaptive challenge around the word agnostic. This word agnostic meant for some parts of the company, hey, we don't do framework training. We don't do SAFe. We don't do DAD. We don't do Scrum, certified Scrum. We teach people on Agile. The other side of the company is like, no, well, we want to give the customer what they want. So we're agnostic in the fact that we don't say we do this or we don't say we do that. We just offer them, based on their needs, the training they need to do their transformation. That impacts mindsets, beliefs. It flows through in how you should market, how you should position yourself. So what happened is this crazy mumbo jumbo of different aspects of that being presented to the marketplace, and we weren't in unison. And that can be hidden, and it takes time to ferret that out. And then if you go through acquisitions, that's still there. Maybe you didn't find it and attack it. But adaptive problems and challenges usually have some type of these 3 elements. So we would, number 2, we would avoid the issue quite a bit as to, let's talk about this agnostic thing. No, we really can't because it's too emotional. The emotional response. We could never resolve the competing priorities. One side wanted to do this, one side wanted to do that. So now you have to really think through this. The future of project management is adaptive problems. Do you have a grip and an understanding of when you can see those adaptive problems? And then ultimately, how do you go about learning to solve those adaptive problems? And it may be multiple projects to get there, But what we're saying also is that this is the world of better front end analysis, better understanding of what it is we're trying to tackle and the tools that we're trying to tackle it with. Two other examples for you, and you probably, if you heard me speak, you've heard these. One is work from home, and one is my weight loss. Work from home is an adaptive problem that converted to a technical problem during COVID. During COVID, it was like you have to work from home, or else our company doesn't survive. So it became a true technical problem. Here's the problem. Here's a solution. Get everybody set up so they could do their job safely within the confines of our regulatory environment, whatever we have, our data privacy rules, whatever we have, our network privacy rules, whatever we have to do their job. And it happened. Amazingly happened. Now, some of you say your environment wasn't as good as other people's environments. I have seen different scenarios, but it happened. Now, coming back out of COVID, we realized we didn't solve the adaptive problem. We just, solve the technical problem. Then when the need for that technical problem stopped, they were still stuck with the issue. And the issue is we still don't understand the basis of that belief in working from home. How do we quantify it? What's the reality? What's the pros and cons? And then attacking it from that perspective. Right now, there's something might happen here, something might happen there. Some person has it, some person doesn't. It might be on job role, might be on time served. There's not a set mindset around it. And the other thing is my weight loss. I probably have lost 400 pounds and gained 500 pounds back. I've tried all types of things. Like you got the examples, like take medication. I've tried exercise. I've tried all these technical things to solve what is an adaptive problem for me. And it's really tied to the idea of belief. And it also ties to cognitive biases. So for me, my weight loss ties to, one is immune neglect. Since I don't have high blood pressure, since I don't have diabetes, then you know what? I'm fine. Number two, time discounting, because I value today in eating, because food is good, more than I value the impact of that eating on my body in the future. So I'm valuing today more than I'm valuing tomorrow. And so you get those elements, you can see ultimately that I haven't been able to break a belief cycle. And this is where Noon comes in. When you look at some of the new weight loss techniques, it's all wrapped around cognitive behavioral therapy, because people realize that a weight issue is either an addictive situation, a thyroid situation, which I'm sorry if you have that issue, or it's an adaptive problem that people can't break the cycle for, and they need different type of problem-solving techniques to get there. Ultimately, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Kevin, thanks for laughing at me about my weight loss. I appreciate that. It certainly is an up and down experience, no pun intended. A map for agile leadership. I just want you to look at it. I could spend 15 minutes on this slide. I don't want to do that. But three-dimensional view, getting on the balcony. There's such a thing called political science. There's a degree in it. It's not bad when done right. And remember, you're going to keep seeing this casualty thing. Orchestration. Again, it's more about getting things done than it is about doing the work. Getting people to do the work. Now, here's the thing. I talked about front-end analysis. Once you got through that front-end analysis and that you got something, hold steady and drive. A lot of people make mistakes and they second guess and they don't take the time for something to ripen. All right, product versus project. Now we're into the two transformational issues. The two transformational issues around tech or around processes. There's a big push in the mindset going on about moving from a project mentality to a product mentality. If you dig into the Capital One transition of their Agile group, you'll see a lot of it has a basis in this idea of moving to a more product-centric mindset. There are companies trying to take example from AWS and looking at the concept of how can I take something I have internally and actually sell it? Productizing what it is that you do within the processes to service your customers. So yes, you have a recording. You'll have the recording of the session. You also have these slides. We'll send those both out. I'm definitely glad you can join us. That's for sure. Thanks for being a part of it. I think it's Chitan. Thank you. So outcome, impact. What are you doing? What's the value associated with it? And have you attacked it from a customer-centric perspective? So did you analyze what it is that the customer wanted, be able to put that into the value of what you're doing, and then present that? That's why you're seeing things like ideal customer profile being developed in project world, personas being developed in product world. You know, I'm going to rotate into something called CX, customer experience, EX, employee experience. This all ties to the product mindset and getting into the idea of digital transformation. Minimize the work you're doing so you can test to ultimately maximize the delivery and the outcomes that occur from what it is that you're working on. More failures early on, less work, and getting it out sooner. Sounds agile, but really what we're saying is we want to solve the problem before we put the project into motion. The problem is a lot of these problems are adaptive problems that we haven't solved yet. So product management is trying to build the techniques to start looking at some of those adaptive problems by focusing more around the customer and what the customer is going to use for that thing that's being developed. And what you get is you get a product life cycle. Everything you do as a project has a life cycle. Before our mindset has a beginning and an end. But really what it has a life cycle. And there's not enough maintenance and management going on with the outputs, because there are some great outputs that happen, but then are not properly worked through in their life cycle. You have internal customers. Internal customers utilize the services that you build. You have external customers. They utilize the services that you build. You know, ultimately, the project work done in financial institutions really is product. You're building product around the customer experience and the customer's abilities to work within that. Gosh, the idea of buying partial stocks, you know, what Robinhood was doing with regard to doing margins and options. Although risky, the technology is democratizing the ability to invest, opening the doors to things for the individual that was only there for a select few in the past. Does it produce lots of risk? Yes, on that side, but it's really what's happening internally. So how do you life cycle that? Maybe after you build it, you might have to put some, regulatory blockers, not right. You might have to put some blockers in there. And you have to readjust that based on the learning that you get from what you rolled out. But the adjustment has to be in that it's not just deliver and done. And the adjustment has to be in the fact that folks aren't going to initially jump for joy when you roll something out. There's a life cycle even into how people adopt what it is that you're doing. And even overlaying this life cycle, product life cycle with the adoption curves of people grabbing hold and utilizing that to your advantage as it relates to how maybe you deploy the product or who do you communicate with initially. This is hard stuff, but there's a lot of push out there to move to more of a product mentality, utilizing a lean portfolio management strategy, and SAFe has some of those elements as well that people are starting to look at, but it's ultimately looking at the picture and then trying to do the analysis up front, tied more towards the usability, the experience, whether it's internal or external, for the things that you're building. All right, so looking at that product mindset, getting some learning on that product mindset, digging into this idea of lean portfolio management is an area for project managers to grow in. And IC Agile has done a really good job on the certification stack there. The next thing, project managers have to really be thinking about is that you're going to get deeper into CX, the experience the customer is having. You're going to get deeper into EX. Your project's going to be wrapped around the employee experience. It's harder and harder to find the talent that you are servicing. So the idea of understanding that you're doing this for them and what their experience is, not just in the system and the tools, but this is also getting into HR, compensation, learning. This whole EX thing is becoming a big push around being able to provide value to the most important element of a business, which is its people, specifically the knowledge worker side of it. And this all ties back to the idea of what type of data can you provide and utilize to enhance the customer experience, to learn so you can provide a better customer experience, and the same on the employee side. So when you look at digital transformation, you got to realize it can affect how you do work internally, the tools that you use and the information those tools can give you, the ability to be able to have some AI working as it relates to project trends, but that ultimately is only going to be good as the data that you're putting into it. Then you have your business models that your customers are going to engage in, whether internal or external customers. How are they going to go about doing their jobs? I spent a year and a half at a startup for an IoT wearable device. I can tell you the biggest challenge for us was figuring out which of the multiple business models we could get into and drive towards. And even our board of directors had 3 or 4 different ideas about where they wanted to go with that product. And there are opportunities there. And this is the world of this is the world of disruption around the concept of Chat GPT. As I talked about at the beginning, I was going to show you an article that I developed out of chat, or I was going to do it on Chat GTP about the future of project management. And I'm still going to try it, but right now it's busy. But this is an AI digital transformation tool that may adjust and change business models. And that happened with BuzzFeed. If you hadn't seen it, BuzzFeed, an information platform, they got rid of their content marketers and they're going to focus 100% on using Chat GTP to write their articles. And their stock went up by 150% on that day. And then finally, the customer experience. What information can you provide your customers so that they can have a better experience? Also, though, what can you get from your customers so they can have a better experience? So all of this is wrapping around the information you're gathering, the data you're gathering. So when you think about digital transformation, really it's a data thing. You're gathering data so you can drive insights. Those insights can support decision-making. The AI currently doesn't make decisions. The AI gives you insights, and it gives you deeper insights because it can process more data. And what you want with data is if you can mash it up. The value of data is that you can put it together with other things and it becomes more valuable. And it gets valuable as it grows, so it doesn't depreciate. It appreciates as you add more, because the more data you add, the more fine-tuned you're going to get with some of the learning algorithms that are utilized in deep learning and machine learning. But for you as project managers, where are you at? Are you have an AI system that you're learning better about how you can run your projects? Do you have AI and data being collected about how your customers are using your systems? Do you have the ability to look at customer data and be able to provide a different service because of the information you're given? Or can you put different information sources together to offer new services? So when you look at this data, look at that. There's no transactional limits. It's a networking effect. It can be used by multiple people for multiple reasons. One pool of data can be used for 1,000 different reasons. And it increases in value as it is put together. There are going to be lots of project managers working on this type of thing. Oh, you can ask questions at any time. So here's a question. Let's see. I don't know for sure if it's the right time to ask a question now or bring my cart in front of the horse, but what is the future of project management as more and more companies are going to agile methodologies? Where there is less usage? Agile actually is a project management tool. So in Agile, you have lots of project management. They go by different names and different titles, but the core is the core. There's no getting rid of the PMP certification as a baseline cert to open the door into the world of SDLC environments. So really, Agile is just another way of expanding the opportunities for project management and the project management way of working, just like digital transformation is. I didn't put Agile in here because Agile is just a known. It's there now. It's a tool. It shouldn't be seen as a disruptor. It should be seen as a tool by which you can learn and use as it is to create value in yourself and to be able to provide value to your company. Use it when you need to use it. Or use it all the time if your organization warrants it. So ultimately, AI is possible because of data and computing power. The more data, the more fine-tuned, the more fidelity you get, but you need the computing power to actually process it. And as I was talking about, ChatGPT has 1% of the internet to work with right now, 1%. And what this machine is doing, it's not mimicking cognitive functions. It's learning. They're learning. They learn through algorithms or they learn through multiple computers talking to one another. There isn't true cognition here. We still have to answer the why question. And we still have to supervise it. And even with chat, and I said it 15 times now, but GPT, you have to supervise the outcome of the things that you see, especially if you're looking at more nuanced information you're trying to get out of it. All right. The time check here is 12:49. I kept a good group of you to this point, so we're going to finish with you. The future of project management around this idea of career insurance and seeing yourself through a different lens. Use chat, please, for any questions. You can ask me questions at any time for any reason. I coach a lot of people in career transitions. I can tell you that no one had any type of plan. It's reactive. The most power you can have in the future of project management is confidence in you as a work product, and you have a plan, even though it could be a lightweight plan, but you have a plan that you can react proactively instead of reactively. Disruption causes a change, up to 12 jobs in your lifetime. I have a brother that has had 2 jobs in his entire career. I have another brother really that has just had 2 jobs, really just one. I have another brother that just had 2 jobs. That's not the norm. That's not the norm. You know, we're going to see lots of job growth from small, mid-sized companies. Why Fortune 500 companies just reinvent themselves. And you can see that in great detail from the book Radical Management by Steve Denning. And we know that there's constantly jobs open because there's not skills available. On the human side, think about the pain that is caused as you're fearing possibly being laid off, or you got laid off and you went through a very dramatic, process. Or, you just fear that you have imposter syndrome and you fear that you can't do the work you're doing. It burns retirement savings. It reduces quality of life. It adds stress. So part of the future is seeing yourself as a product, seeing yourself as a free agent. As I talked about, increasing the value of you as a product increases the value for what you do for your company. Where is your current career in the S curve? So project management is really in a disruptive phase right now. Yes, project management jobs are going to be over 88 million in the year 2027. But it's a disruptive area. It's just not governed by a PMBOK that has, 200 pages, and that's what you do to be a project manager. There's so much disruption going on, and it's going to be pulling in different pieces of information across the board. So what investments are you making in? Where are you going to extend outside of this project management? Are you going to have a specialty? Are you going to jump from project management somewhere else? And then who are the personas who would hire you? So who would hire you at this point? What are your value propositions? So I have talked about T-shape a lot, and the thought process here is the bottom of the T is your project management expertise. Right now, I look at it as you got to have a PMP to enter the playing field. Then you're looking at what type of what type of other certifications do you want to wrap around that? And then I'm saying that you might want to build an expertise on product and an expertise on digital transformation. But the top of the T is all the stuff I talked about around adaptive. Your top of the T should be your power skills, your professional skills wrapped around how you can be adaptive and understanding adaptive challenges. So value proposition is basically how you produce, how you create value. I really understand how to use R in the data collection process. That's a value proposition. I have the ability to adjust and learn very quickly, and here's how I've done that. What value do you create? It should be the most important bullets on your it should be some of the most important bullets on your LinkedIn page. And I get so frustrated with some of the bullet points I see. It's not about, people you manage. It's about, all right, what type of complex projects do you work on? How did you deliver it? What changes and adjustments did you have to make and learn in order to do X, Y, Z? Prince 2 certification, there is value there, but only for very specific organizations. It's one that's not going to be seen on Indeed or Dice as much, unless you're working internationally, especially in Southeast Asia, but more especially in Europe. So there's opportunities there, but it's certainly not something that is going to be a telltale value proposition here in the US. And I only got a few minutes left for you folks. So the career insurance playbook has the concept number 1 of being indispensable. How do you make yourself indispensable in your current job? Now, that doesn't mean that you're not irreplaceable. You walk into anything, you got to realize that you're replaceable. I know I am replaceable, but you can be indispensable. But it ties more towards how you work than the things you know. Expert power base erodes. We want to work with people we like, and likability is much more than just being nice. So this is a whole part of a presentation that you can dig into. And then how are you preparing for the inevitable? What is your learning strategy right now? How are you tying into trade associations? What is your network with recruiters? How have you built up your personal brand? Ultimately, in the spaces you all work, your hiring manager is going to look at your LinkedIn page. It's probably the first or second thing they do. I'm going to stop us at the power skills because I want to see if you have any questions, but you'll get the slide deck for this. Critical thinking is a skill set, a power skill that we have to continue to develop in ourselves. We don't leave enough time to think about the things we're digging into. We have to see the impact of us across the entire system. It's not the tree anymore, it's the forest. And then all the in-betweens that are affected by your tree. And it goes back to beliefs. The bottom of the iceberg is the beliefs that build up everything else. And then ultimately radical candor, being able to communicate confidently, respectfully to help drive ideas forward. What valuable certification you put on the resume for a project management role with respect to accomplishments in terms of dollar value? Are you going to take a separate webinar, or can you answer that now? So I'll answer that question now, but at this point I will end it and see if anyone else has any questions. Any comments? Any thoughts? See, the thing about a resume is the story is twofold. You want to show your bottom of the T. So people are going to hire you for your expertise, and there are valuable certificates and certification programs out there. But ultimately, you want to show how you've learned, adjusted, pivoted, and created value within the company you worked in. What work did you do and what value did it create? Certifications should be seen as a pathway. So do you want to get into SAFe, and what are some of the SAFe certifications there that you might want to dig into? Do you want to get into digital transformation? What are some of the certificate programs you want to dig into? That would all be part of, if you looked at career insurance, the conversation with a career coach to help you think through that more and attack it. I can't just say in this presentation, here are the top 5 certifications you can go after. If you want to send me a message, I can certainly write some up for you and give you some thoughts. Yes, Megan, I can give you some book thoughts as well. I'll wrap those around adaptive leadership. Specifically, there's some great books in that area, but the most important book I think about as you work through this presentation is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. That is the book. So Thinking Fast and Slow. So any other questions? Great questions so far. It's been outstanding. Any thoughts, comments? You can use the chat window. Hey, Megan, no problem. I really enjoyed this. Thank you. Appreciate that. How do you as a PM guide others to become more learning? That's the adaptive leadership mindset. It's through showing the referent power base. It's through sharing. It's through teaching others how to be adaptive. So I would dig into the idea of looking at adaptive leadership. So Kyla, how do you as a PM guide others look at adaptive leadership and then be able to talk through storytelling? You teach others through presenting stories so they can learn through it. And how do you communicate and tell stories about how you can get through adaptive problems and how you can fight the status quo? And that's all wrapped around what I would say is adaptive leadership. That's by Martin Lipsky and Heifetz, Practical Adaptive Leadership. We'll send out the recording. Any other questions in chat you want to share or the QA? Kayla, I hope that answered your question. We still have a little bit of time for those that want to stay on. Great, thanks you. I'm glad I could share some value, some information with you. I'm glad you got value out of this. Well, all have a great rest of your day. Thank you for sharing some time with me. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being with you folks. Have a great rest of your day.